Good evening, everyone. Thank you for making time to be here. Tonight, I want to do 4 things. I want to tell you where our students go after AMJ. I want to show you what our projects actually look like and why we build classes around them. We want to walk you through exactly how we correct writing, and I want to play you something so you can hear progress rather than just take my word for it. I want to start off and explain where our students go. I know that in Korea there are many high schools and universities that students aim for, highly competitive schools. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help students achieve their goals, have them attend those schools. We're keeping those ideas in mind for the students and taking a look at modern expectations of those high schools, middle schools, and universities. Thus, we encourage independent thinking, critical thinking, and expanding on their ideas. We get a lot of feedback from families who have attended AMJ. They always talk about how now the students, they're not afraid to speak in class, especially they know how to structure an essay. They're not just guessing, they're just not writing randomly. And they're used to being asked what they thought, or they're just on their thoughts. Mm-hmm. How we teach learning through projects? Well, students at AMJ learn through their projects. A project really makes students read, argue, write, and speak about things that they care about. That combination is actually what builds fluency, and it's why we structure most of our teaching this way. Movie projects is something that kids really like to enjoy. It's something that our lower levels really like to participate in. It's just not, wearing costumes and having fun. A lot of it is having them think of their own thoughts, writing them down on paper, and then rehearsing and practicing expressing those thoughts. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, our young students move on and make a new movie or, create their own scripts, that would be great to see.
Yeah, I was going to say too that these projects are so helpful for the students because they're not just about creating. They begin with foundational background understanding of whatever the topic is. Mm-hmm. So if it's science, they get a background understanding of that. If it's art, they get a background understanding of that. Then we move into critical thinking about that background information, building or creating something and reflecting on it. So the whole process is very active. The students are engaged, thinking critically and analytically, and that really helps take them to the next level.
I'm thinking. One project that I really enjoy doing here is what we call mock trial.
Because I think if he got 100%, the teacher would kind of suspect, did you get the answer keys?
Yeah. But then why did he get the answer keys in the first place if he didn't want to get a better score?
Because if he gets the answer keys, maybe he can get 2 or more questions right that his mother says to have.
This is where students take on the role as lawyers and witnesses, something that they could possibly do in their future.
Hopefully not as the criminal.
In this project, what students really focus on, the skills that they're building on, even though we don't, it's not mentioned directly to the students, is that they have to listen closely, take notes on what someone is saying, actually understand what it is that person is saying, mm-hmm. and thus, on the spot, create a rebuttal or, an argument against their point. Mm-hmm. And that's one skill that, we highly value here at AMJ.
It has to be reasonable and has to reason and logical to convince people, during the lawsuit, whatever, trial.
It's not just about the activity that they're doing, it's about the way we're conditioning them to think, the kind of patterns that we want them to use when they approach a problem. So they look at it, they can analyze it, break it down, and solve it, or at least come to some solution that makes sense.
Absolutely. And they're responding with not something that they just prepared. It's on the spot.
Exactly.
And lastly, career projects, of course, it connects their English directly to their actual future.
Yep.
How are you doing?
Just fine, yeah. Okay.
All right.
Let's go on.
All right, Mr. Musk, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, hello, I'm Elon Musk. I am a professional entrepreneur that started up many famous companies such as PayPal, OpenAI, or like Tesla, SpaceX, and all those companies.
Wow, you must have been busy over all these years.
Preparing them, job interviews, things like that.
They can think about their future, and like we are planning some America, US travel to experience the like colleges and the big tech
Yes.
companies. Like it's really like connected to their like real future life.
A lot of the books and activities we do here have some relevance to their future. Another example is the test prep ones. It's literally preparing them to write tests that will maybe help them get into those colleges or another Hagwon international school, go to the USA.
So lastly, I want to explain, what all of our projects have in common. Each project ends with the student expressing their thoughts to other people, not just to teachers, but to their peers, and then defending them as well. This is the skill that we're building on across all of them. The reason that they were accepted to those schools.
Okay, we're gonna make AMJ alumni to make a lawyer and what else? What was it?
We go through something what is called the revision cycle when it comes to grading students' writing. I want to take you through the 4 steps. Step 1 is the draft. This is where the students obviously write their draft, but we're not just looking for perfection. We're not hounding the students on making sure to get their spelling and their grammar correct. We're actually more interested in having them write down their thoughts. And we're eager to find mistakes because mistakes tell us what we need to teach next. If we take data on all their mistakes and we look at maybe we need to update our grammar books. Maybe it's another step. Maybe certain levels need to focus more on this aspect of grammar. And step 2, the feedback page. Every piece of writing, what we call packets here, comes with its own dedicated feedback page. The feedback that the teachers will be providing the students is detailed content. Are their ideas clear? Is there evidence? And where can the reader get lost? Obviously, if there's a writer, there should be a reader. And of course, we go through all the fundamental grammar and spelling. We try to look out for those as well. But we never try to discourage our students. We actually try to encourage them to write down their thoughts, not to overthink. Some of us get in trouble overthinking, for sure, yes. So step number 3 is the rewrite. This is where the students get to practice writing, looking at the feedback in front of them, the feedback that their teachers worked hard to provide them. And of course, at the very end, the teachers will look at it and make sure that the students applied what their teachers recommended. Next is something big here at AMJ. All the teachers and staff here know the importance of what we call video diaries. This is where parents and teachers not only just look at their students' grades, but they could actually view their progress. We record students sharing their thoughts, their ideas, what they learned in class. And I want to show you a video of one of our students. Not necessarily one of the best students, but a student that shows different points in her time with us.
I'll start to talk about my lesson. First, in link lesson, I learned about eating insects. Eating insects are disgusting when we hear it, but it is really not so disgusting.
The first clip, if you look here, if you watch her carefully, she's doing well. Her thoughts are organized. She includes an introduction, reasons, and a conclusion. She's following a map that we help younger learners follow here at AMJ. But if you listen closely, there are some pauses. They come frequently. What we believe here is that's where the student is retrieving rather than speaking. They're constantly looking for those words. I do the same when I'm speaking my Korean. This is not criticism. It is actually where a student should be at this stage. Now, I want to show you another video.
The term test was about what we learned this term, of course. And I found grammar or writing the most complicated. So for writing, I remember the topic as if we have the chance to put some kind of like neuroprocessor in our brains to enhance our the skills of our brain. Would we do that?
This is the same student over the following terms. You know, now you notice her pace. She's moving now. She's conversating. You know, she's showing the rhythm of a conversation in her video. You know, the script has completely disappeared. Her ideas are still organized, but maybe even better. The structure now comes from her own thoughts. The pauses are less, and, you know, listen to where they happen, no longer at the moment of retrieving or trying to think of the word. She's actually trying to decide on which thought to express. And this is how teachers critique the videos and we provide feedback, not just criticism, but where they're actually progressing.
I was going to say something. Should I say something?
Go ahead.
I think I'm actually surprised that more English academies don't do the videos. And I think it's important to reiterate what Ben just said about the kind of feedback it gives to the parents. Because some students are really good at reading and writing tasks or textbook work, but if you actually talk to them, they don't sound very fluent, they don't sound conversational. So you could have a student go into a school who on paper is doing very well. They don't speak English at home. And so they have no idea that their child can't really conversate well. So these videos that we do at AMJ, whether it's the video diaries or other videos we do in projects and at various other points, they really give you something as valuable as a report card. It's very quick, but it's weekly and you actually get to see the progress and not just a number on a piece of paper. So it's really good
Absolutely,
And
yes.
video diaries especially is not prepared.
Absolutely,
like, they're
yeah.
not prepared. They're just like talking what they want to say, so we can see trackle their like improvement when it comes to fluency and thinking skills
And honestly, another thing too is they're by themselves. So it's not prepared. The teacher isn't preparing it, they aren't preparing it really. And they're by themselves. So they don't have a teacher standing there forcing them to do it. What they're doing is completely independent. So if your child is talking for 5 minutes and they're talking quite fluently and you see them putting in a lot of effort, that's a really good sign. That's really good feedback for you. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about our curriculum at AMJ. So AMJ offers a dynamic, multifaceted curriculum that helps to improve vocabulary development, reading comprehension, and critical thinking. And although we have a lot of different textbooks, we can group them into 5 different categories. The first category is our main texts. This is Link, this is Hackers, this is Reading Explorer. And these books help to improve reading comprehension, they help to develop vocabulary and analytical thinking through these fiction and nonfiction passages in the book. So the kids come to class, we read them together, we do discussions, they answer questions in the book, and it helps to really improve their ability to understand complex texts. The second group of books we have is our book club textbooks. So each term, the students get a book and they go really in depth with it. The teacher assigns chapters. They read those chapters at home and they also have to do a summary of what they read. Now, each week they bring the summary in, the teacher marks it, gives feedback, and then the next week they try to write a better summary based on the feedback. And we also do some textbook work about critical thinking questions related to the text and group discussions as well. We also have test prep textbooks. These test prep books are they're for the teen levels, so blue, purple, and black. And they not only help with exams that the students could have to write abroad, but also in Korea. So whether you're staying or going, this is very useful for you. Now, whether you're doing it now or you're going to do it in the future, your student will have to write tests at some point to get into a school, to get a scholarship, to go on a work study trip, whatever it may be. Now, 5 of our test prep books are specifically English tests that they'll encounter. If they're trying to go to an international school, or if they're trying to prove that they can go to an English university, they're going to need these skills. The two most recent books are more aligned with standardized testing, logical thinking, reading comprehension, identifying flaws. And these will be very helpful if you're a student or your child ever needs to write the SAT, the LSAT, standardized tests like that. The fourth group of textbook work we have is our integrated grammar and writing books. So these books bridge basic fundamental grammar concepts with longer form essay writing. So unlike some books or a lot of grammar books that you'll find in Hagwons that just focus on fill in the blank, circle this, multiple choice, our grammar books now begin that way, and progressively throughout the unit, they focus more and more on applying those basic grammar concepts to writing sentences, writing paragraphs, and finally, at the end of each unit, writing one 5-paragraph essay on a different topic each unit. And the students will also write different types of 5-paragraph essays. So they're going to apply those grammar skills they learned to an argumentative essay. They'll apply them to an expository essay. They'll apply them to a compare and contrast essay. So by the end of the book, they've written 5 different types of essays using all kinds of grammar concepts they learned, and that's very different than just circling, filling in the blank, and not being able to apply what you learned. Finally, we have our project packets. They do an in-depth project at every level, and that project begins with some background information. It goes into critical and analytically thinking about what they learned, beginning to create something. We know that they can create something physical like a volcano. They can create something digitally like creating a video game using a coding website, or they could even create a scenario like the mock trial, right? We're making something together where it's real and it comes from the students' ability to think about what they're doing and apply the things that they learned at the start of the term. All of these things that we're talking about here involve the students actively engaged with the material. It's an IB style research-oriented inquiry every single day in every single class, where they're not just sitting back and memorizing and reading, they're actually applying what they learned. And finally, the textbooks that we use have themes based on the different levels. Each level has a different theme. So that theme is directly connected to the passages you're going to read, the types of essays you're going to write, and questions you're going to answer. If you're a yellow student, your theme is animals and geography. If you're a red student, your theme is science and nature. If you're a magenta student, your theme is art and the 5 senses. If you're blue, it's innovation and technology. If you're purple, it's world issues. And if you're black, it's career, jobs, and your future. So you can already have kind of a sense of the kinds of topics you'll be covering in your books, but there's still going to be surprises. Red is science and nature. You might read a passage about something as obscure as the evolution of mice in a certain part of the world, or how plants grow in extreme environments, or you're going to read something about photosynthesis. It's just generally speaking always going to be about science. So it could be biology, chemistry, geology, or nature, plants, ocean, things like that. Everything. So what ends up happening by the end of the term, you have a much more well-rounded understanding of science and nature for the red kids. If you're magenta, you will have a much more well-rounded understanding of art and the 5 senses, because you're doing essay writing. Your book is about it. Your summaries are about it. The critical thinking questions you're doing are about it. So by the end of it, in addition to learning the things that we're trying to teach you at AMJ about English, you've also learned a lot about this specific topic. Hello AMJ parents. I have 3 exciting updates about things we're introducing this fall. I'm going to start with the biggest and most important one. We've completely changed our grammar series. Instead of basic grammar books that focus on technical, grammatical mechanics, we're now integrating writing into that, so that the students, as they go through each unit, are able to actually apply what they're learning to their writing, and it all culminates in an essay at the end of each unit where they apply all the things that they learned and try to show their teacher that they're not only good at essay writing and creativity, but also applying those grammar skills. Why do you think that's going to be important for our students, Ben?
It's a way for them to organize their thoughts. Most students, younger students, have trouble organizing their thoughts. It's kind of a little bit scrambled.
Absolutely.
With these new grammar books that we're introducing, hopefully it helps them not only with their grammar, but to brainstorm ideas as well.
Absolutely. Getting better at the whole writing process.
Absolutely, and by providing details and expanding on those details. A big part of these grammar books, what Clinton showed me, was the feedback that the teachers will be able to provide to their students. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting those grammar books out and working more, Clinton.
It's been a lot of work.
How can better improve our grammar skills, like compared to a current book?
Well, I'm going to explain that right now by breaking down how each grammar book works. Because whether you're in yellow or black, the logic is consistent in each book. Most grammar books that you're going to find at Hagwons like this are very simple and one-dimensional. They start with basic grammar concepts and they end with basic grammar concepts. You're circling, fill in the blank, cross out, things like this that are good for writing quizzes and tests, but aren't necessarily good for actually speaking English in the real world and writing. So what we're doing is we're beginning each of these grammar books with an introduction and some basic key grammar concepts that the students need to learn. At this point, we are doing the more passive, sometimes boring, circle, fill in the blank, just to make sure the students have that basic necessary understanding. Once we've drilled that in and we're certain that they're ready for the next step, they begin integrating that understanding into sentences. Now, sentences are simple, but they're important. Each sentence has to be correct grammatically and content-wise. Once we've proven that they can write a good sentence grammatically using the rules they just learned, and also identify a bad sentence using the rules they just learned, then they can do the same thing with paragraphs. So now we know the basic concepts. We can write sentences. Now we can read and write paragraphs. Once we've mastered that, we're ready to put it all together at the end of the unit and write our 5-paragraph essay. Now keep in mind, throughout this whole time, everything is about the theme that they're doing for that term. So if it's Magenta, learning about art in the 5 senses, they've been reading, writing, and understanding things related to art in the 5 senses. So now they can actually apply grammatically correct sentences, paragraphs, and eventually an essay to these topics. And so that's how it's going to improve their grammar, because it's not one-dimensional. It's not simple. It's putting everything together.
Especially they have a lot of vocabulary retention as well about those themes specifically, right?
Absolutely. And anybody who's studied anything, like if you've been to college or university or taken difficult courses, you know you learn the most and you remember the most when you have to do many things at once. When you have to read this thing, put it here, correct it, rewrite it, then apply it, and think about the content you're doing. And that's what we're doing. We're putting so many things together and stretching the students. And so by the end of it, I believe that they'll have improved their grammar without even really realizing it. It won't feel like, oh, I circled the right letter or I filled in the right blank. They'll just naturally and more fluently begin to speak and write better. Now, the second thing we're going to be introducing this term is our essential vocabulary here at AMJ. Each level, each class will get 15 new vocabulary words each week. About half of those words are going to be directly related to their theme. So if it's a Black class, it's going to be related to jobs, career, and their future, so on and so forth. The other half of those words are going to be core academic key words that they need to know at their level. Now, 15 words a week may not sound like a lot, but that's 60 words per month. And by the end of the year, if they've gone through all 4 levels, that's 720 brand new words that they would never have otherwise known if they weren't at AMJ and if we didn't have this essential vocabulary. Now that matters a lot because even not knowing a few words on a given page in a book can completely change your understanding. So these words are really going to stretch them and push them to be able to understand books at a higher level. And also, it's important to point out that these words matter in terms of looking at them at home because every month we're going to have a vocabulary test on some number of words they learned that month. So the students shouldn't just think, oh, I never have to do this. You do want to do it because you want to do well on that quiz. Also, at the very end of the term, when we do our term test, the key essential vocabulary words will be incorporated. It won't be a huge part of the test, but it will make up a part of it. And so it's going to be essential for you to review.
I see, Clinton. And you mentioned just now that this essential vocabulary is going to help them with their reading. Are there any other areas that this vocabulary will help the students?
So many other areas. I mean, reading is probably the most obvious because they're going to encounter the words and have a better understanding of what they're reading. But writing is always made better when you have a larger vocabulary. It could be as simple as making your writing appear more fancy and at a higher level, or the ability for them to communicate thoughts that they can't quite get out if they don't know the meaning of that word. It's also going to help their speaking too. If they're ever doing a speaking test, maybe they're doing an interview for an international school or a job interview in the future in English, they're going to have 720 more words that can wow people.
Awesome.
And of course, like regular classes have like 15 weekly things. Like,
So if you were to stay at AMJ from the beginning of yellow all the way through to black, you're going to end up with over 4,300 essential vocabulary words that are going to benefit you or your child immensely as they move through their lives in school and in their career. And finally, last but not least, this term at AMJ, we are adding an increased focus on ethical and smart use of AI. So some academies and some people almost encourage students to be afraid of AI or to avoid it because it's bad or they'll get in trouble. But we know that in this era, digital literacy is incredibly important and AI is a big part of that. So we want to empower students. We want to teach them how to actually use AI to not cheat or get ahead, but to benefit their learning. So some examples are using AI to quiz yourself before a test. It could be using AI to have a conversation with it, to check the grammatical and sentence structure in your writing. These are just some examples of how we're going to be encouraging students in our textbooks directly on the page to use AI.
Now, how will these students be using this AI software? Would it be available at AMJ or would they be assigned to use their computers at home?
Well, they're going to have chances at AMJ to use it because the teacher's sitting there with a computer and a screen, so we can do it together. We also do spend time in our lab where the students get to use computers and they will have access to AI tools. But most notably, they're going to be able to take these things that they learn, bring them home, bring them to their other academies, bring them to anything that they're doing in their life to use this powerful tool to make themselves a little bit more effective and a little bit more knowledgeable. Another important thing to point out is that although ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude are the basic fundamental building blocks of understanding how to use AI, at AMJ we're also going to try to introduce students to more complex and even more useful versions of AI. For example, some of the students are going to be running into a lot of scientific theories and ideas in their studies. Blue will definitely learning about technology and innovation. There are specific AI tools that exist to put an idea in and to get an actual peer-reviewed research paper sent back to you. So it's not just an algorithm telling you yes or no. It is a peer-reviewed paper that was written by a professor sent to you in whatever language you want. So we're going to introduce these things so that the students can use it in all areas of their life and not just asking basic questions to ChatGPT, although that can be important too.
it has been much better than last year, how AI was, right? Everybody's using AI at this time.
Yeah.
Compared to last year, more people, better information.
Yeah.
Do you Google or do you ChatGPT?
I use Gemini and sometimes ChatGPT. The thing is, even though more people are using it now, it can be a limiting factor too, because some people lean on it too much.
Sure.
So our students at AMJ, we know that they need to get better at a few different things. One of those things is asking the right questions. So if you're just using AI and not putting the thought in yourself and learning how to critically think, your ability to ask questions is going to get worse. So we're trying to cultivate the ability to ask good questions and use AI to help improve the questions, but not getting AI to do everything for you. Can you think of anything else, Ben, that would be useful for our students?
So we're helping our students learn how to think when it comes to using AI, how to approach it, and using their best judgments when inputting any commands. And it's always important that they have their own ideas and their own voice. And always learning not just how to communicate with the machine, but also communicating with others, working together to create something such as a project or any
Teamwork matters, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And we want to make sure that they're still understanding things deeply. Their intelligence is something that we're trying to grow, not their ability to type something into ChatGPT.
It's not a
get the
typing
result right
class.
away.
Exactly.
세계 경제 포럼이 얘기를 하기를 일단 2025년 작년에 core skills to survive in 2025 for the future is analytical thinking. 분석하는 능력이 69% 가장 중요하고요. 뭐 resilience, leadership, creative thinking, curiosity, 뭐 technology literacy, 뭐 AI, big data. 그러니까 사실 기계를 머신을 이용하는 AI를 이용하는 스킬 그걸 잘하는 능력도 필요하지만 그것보다도 내가 분석적으로 생각할 수 있고 내가 아이디어를 크리에이티브하게 가질 수 있고 그리고 또 이렇게 뭔가 호기심을 갖고 항상 질문하는 태도를 갖고 하는 것이 매우 중요하다는 것을 볼 수 있죠. 이게 중요합니다. 그리고 how about OECD learning?
OECD Learning Compass 2030 is very interesting. Usually students will rely on teachers, counselors to choose the best schools that they can attend. When it comes to OECD, they introduced something called student agency. Now, student agency is where students are counseled or taught on how to choose schools and apply for schools on their own. Based on their own interests and their own ideas of what's a good school for themselves.
So they are shaping their future, not following teachers necessarily, but they have their own mindset
Yes.
to decide something.
And one of the ways that we're able to cultivate that in students and make sure that they do develop student agency is to focus on an IB approach to developing their minds. So we want them to be people who inquire, people who like to ask questions and know how to ask questions. So we try to pull that out of the students in our lessons. We want them to be thinkers. We don't just want them, as we said, to use the computer for everything. We want them to independently come up with ideas, critically think about them, and try to figure things out. We want them to be good communicators, so we do a lot of group discussions and collaborative activities. We also want them to be open-minded. So we're not trying to force them to believe this thing or that thing. We're giving them a variety of things that they can apply their critical thinking skills to and decide what's best for them. And we want them to take risks. So we don't encourage them to do things the safe way or to think about things in conventional ways. And finally, we try to make them as reflective as we can. And that's built into our curriculum. So at the end of basically every unit or chapter, there's always reflection activities about themselves, about what they learned, about what they experienced, what they didn't know. And so we're building students who are going to have this agency to make a better future for themselves.
To try to make those skill set for our students, we're doing
debate, right? Yeah, we got project-based learning, we got presentation, something that I really enjoy watching the students sweat while they present their projects. We got writing, we got IB style.
they are starting from good question and like they are researching by themselves,
Yes.
judging by themselves. That's what it's made for.
And as someone who's worked at several other schools, I can tell you that a lot of schools that like students could potentially go to, they're just picking their curriculum based on kind of what's easy, what seems convenient and easy. You know, you have like very standard books, but the way that we're doing things here is we're really trying to thoughtfully piece together everything from debate to the project-based learning to the reflections so that we actually end it with a specific type of student, a student who, quite frankly, aligns with the kind of values that we're talking about here.
Right. 사람들은 AI를 잘 쓰는 것이랑 못 쓰는 사람들 사이 격차가 이제 커질 것이다 라고 말씀하시지만 AI를 사용하는 것 자체는 거의 대부분의 사람들이 기본적인 능력이 될 거라고 생각을 해요. 근데 AI가 더 많은 것을 대신할수록 AI의 희소성은 떨어지기 때문에 더 내가 내 생각을 질문하고 내가 판단하고 내 관점 만들고 소통하고 새로운 것을 만드는 그런 능력의 가치는 더욱 더 커질 거라고 생각합니다. 그래서 AI 시대의 교육은 단순히 AI를 잘 쓰는 법을 가르치는 데 그쳐서는 안 되고 AI를 사용하되 생각의 주도권은 학생에게, 사람에게 있는 것. 이게 저는 앞으로 아이들에게 계속 중요하게 필요할 역량이라고 생각합니다.
Here at AMJ, students get to choose between two schedules. One is where they get to come 3 times a week, and the other is twice a week. Whether or not they choose option A or option B, each day the students get to learn something different. For example, the first class will be about vocabulary and reading, and then the other half of the class, students will get to work on their projects, something that they really love to do. And other days, students will come in and it'll be mostly focused on our book club. Students get to read, share their thoughts on the story, and improve their reading comprehension. And then we would transition into a grammar class. It's the students' favorite class, grammar. So that's how AMJ loves to.
So either they're taking 2 times, 3 times, it's the same learning that they should learn for the whole term, right?
Yes, it's all divided, and at the very end, we have what's called the term test, and it's where we grade the students, or it's where the students are tested on everything that they've learned throughout the term.
I see. What about Saturday class? Just one, just a.
Yeah, so some students who do the Saturday class don't do the regular schedule at all. And some students do the Saturday class as enrichment or further education. So it's 1 day a week. It's Saturday morning from 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. And we cover a lot of basics that we would cover in our regular AMJ schedule. We do vocabulary classes, TEFL, writing and novel classes, project, test prep. And it's just a chance for, on the weekend, kids to sort of stay on top of their English.
The foundation, both classes have the same thing because they are AMJ classes. Foundational is always the grammar, vocabulary, reading and writing, those essential skills. But we are adding thinking skill and communication skill, inquiry, research, critical thinking, and speaking, debate, presentation. Those are added. And then they are making term and creation, right? So like after making their project-based learning, the outcomes and their presentation and their own like art piece, some kind of work they are bringing to home, like movies or some posters and diorama.
So as you can see from everything that we've talked about today, AMJ has a very deliberate, intentional curriculum and plan for how we teach students to make sure that they don't just benefit now, but they keep benefiting even when they're long gone from AMJ.
Absolutely, that's the main goal, and I couldn't agree more with you, Clinton. And yeah, to be honest, I just hope that after students graduate from AMJ, they find all the success and have all the skills that they need to go and continue on their future.
네, 사실 이 설명회를 하게 된 이유 중에 하나도 감사합니다 전화를 꽤 많이 받았었어요. Thank you call from our graduates. Like graduate is like a little bit cheesy word. 근데 고등학생이 된 친구들로부터 이렇게 잘 지내고 있는 것 같다라는 인사를 받았을 때 그걸 부모님들께 말씀드리고 싶고 그 친구들이 지금 왜 성공하는 학생 생활을 하고 있는지 성공하는 인생을 살고 있는지를 AMJ에서 많은 것들이 영향을 받았다는 것을 안내드리고자 말씀드렸고 다음은 이제 질문 세션으로 Q&A 세션으로 넘어가겠습니다.